Welcome to the Roy Matlock Jr. Money and Business Hour. Reach Roy at 615-843-2999 or visit roymatlockjr.com. And now, here's Roy.
All right, Roy Matlock Jr. here, and I want to just say thank you to all of our listeners. This is the beginning of year 8 that I'm back on the air. I was on for 9 years back in the Money Game days with Dave Ramsey, and we did that, and then I took a little break, and then 2018 I came back, so we're 2026 now, and alive and well. I appreciate that, and getting ready to hit the ripe age of 65 and 40 years of talking money, and you know what? I still like doing it. I have people all the time, they ask me, when are you going to retire? I said, well, never. Why would I retire? I'm having fun. And so if you're tuning in today, we're going to talk about, maybe not so much fun, but we're going to talk about winning and winning the money game. And I had a friend of mine, Dave, that he's one of my close friends, and he and I were talking about disciplines, and things like that. When you think about discipline, I looked it up. It said the practice of training people to obey rules. Now, when you think about obeying the rules, most of the time when it comes to your money or your health or anything like that, you don't have someone training you to do it, to obey the rules or a code of behavior with punishment or other undesired consequences for those who fail to comply. So here's what it says. The practice of training people to obey rules. And if you don't, you have punishment or undesired consequences for failing to comply. So there are rules of money. There are rules of disciplines when it comes to your money. And if you abide by those rules, it's like gravity. It works. But if you disobey the rules, then you get consequences. So today we're going to talk about habits that decide 2026 and beyond, and make sure that your habits are in line with success. So that's what the show is about today. If you're just tuning in, my name is Roy Matlock Jr., and you can visit roymatlockjr.com and learn about anything having to do with money. We've got it right on the website, and it's free to a lot of downloads, stuff like that. So let's start out with what are the keys to having discipline when it comes to your money. It begins with what I call a GPS, and that is your goal, your plan, and your schedule. Normally we think of a GPS as we get in our car and we put into the map, it says, where are we going? And you put the goal in where you want to end up. And then it gives you some, turn here, do this, do that, do this, and then you will arrive at a such and such time. When it comes to your money, that same GPS applies. We come up with a goal, which typically, rule of thumb, is if you really want to be good and set up 20 times your desired income, that when you retire, that's when you can quit. That's when you can get financially independent at 20 times your desired income. So if you want to have basically $100,000 a year, a good rule of thumb would be about $2 million, $150,000 a year, $3 million, $75,000 a year would be $1.5 million. So you come up with a number. That number then is put into a date, and that's the goal is built out on what we want to do, and the schedule is the date. So we say 30 years, we're going to have 1.5 million. That's our goal. We're going to do it in 30 years. Then what's the plan? Let's get our plan in place. All right. So one of the things that I have believed forever, I'm a self-employed business person. No one tells me to get up and go do anything. If I just want to lay around and do nothing, then no one's going to say, hey, get up, get moving, all that stuff. And so one of the most important things I've learned over my career in business, which I've been doing this for 41 years, I've been self-employed for 45 years, is that the schedule is the most important thing. If you know you have to be somewhere at a certain time, you're going to end up always doing better. So if you're on your own, you say, hey, I've got to be on time at 9 a.m. doing whatever I'm doing and ready to go. I remember back in the early days when Dave Ramsey and I started the radio show, The Money Game, we had to be there at 1 o'clock because it was a live show. So what that meant was 101 didn't work. We had to be there at 1 o'clock. And I knew that I had to be on the road no matter what, no matter if there were wrecks or whatever. I knew I had to do that. And for 9 years, 5 days a week, I was on time. I was never late. I remember one time rushing in, and I heard the music in the parking lot, and I remember starting the show, and I think it sounded, I was out of breath, all that kind of stuff. And that's how things were. So I had to have a discipline. I had to be on time. I had to be where I wanted to be. Well, your money disciplines are the same way. If you get certain disciplines, like a budget, which we're going to talk about today, to where you have a predetermined plan of action on how you're going to spend your money. If you have a consistent income and you make sure that on all the time you have different areas that you can start getting income streams. I always like to have it's like columns of income, and I get it from this, I get it from this, I get it from this, I get it from this. And that's what you're building. You're building your taxable income, which you get up and go to work. You've got your investment income. You got your tax-free income, your Roth IRAs. You might have real estate, whatever it may be. Eventually, maybe you have a side business, whatever it may be. And eventually what happens is that you're running on 4 or 5 income streams. And so now you got the 4 or 5 income streams to get started with. You start always be working on your income. So if you have a consistent income that's got diversification within that income, then what's going to happen is if you live below your means, and the way you do that is you create a quality of life gap between your income and your outgo. That means you're not overstretching yourself. You're not always worried, things like that. That doesn't mean don't take a risk. You got to take some risk. I mean, if you start a business, you're going to put it at risk. You're going to do that kind of stuff. But you always have a way to make sure that you have income streams coming in. Once you do that, you're now in a position to get moving and get busy and make it happen. And so today's show is about discipline habits that you're going to want to have if you want to go out and build a successful financial life. Visit RoyMatlockJr.com if you'd like to schedule a free consultation. We'll be right back. All right, Roy Matlock Jr. here. If you're just tuning in, we are talking about the financial disciplines that will shape you in 2026. And if you missed the first segment and you're just getting on the show, you can always go to Roy Matlock Jr. You can go to Spotify, whatever or Apple, any of those, and you can listen to the Roy Matlock Jr. Money and Business Hour. It's on the podcast. We've got, I think we got over 200 shows now in the podcast library. So anything you need to know, you can also visit RoyMatlockJr.com and look for the podcast, and you can actually search the areas that you're looking for if you want to learn stuff. So when we go into 2026, first thing you want to do is you want to take a look at where you're at. And, 2025 may have been great, may have been bad, whatever it is, you are where you are. I mean, it's, you can suck your thumb and cry and moan and complain and do that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you are where you are. And so now what we want to do is lock in any type of behavioral changes that we need to do. And the main thing you need to know is you get habits that you repeat. And if you are working, bad habits will create bad outcomes. Good habits will create good outcomes. Discipline always beats motivation. All right. Meaning showing up, small decisions. If you take care of the little money, the big money always takes care of itself. Delay gratification, and you will be happier later. And so we start going down these lines of, getting it together. So what is some financial disciplines that you want to do? I'm going to give you the first one. I've got a book right in front of me that was written, I think about 40 years ago, and it's a great book. It's called Common Sense. And Common Sense was the first introduction to money management principles by a guy named Art Williams. And I've used those principles for many, 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 many years. And he had a system, okay, about managing your financial future. And the first one he said was get started now. And the most important thing I see in working with people is, they just procrastinate. And it just hurts me when I tell people, hey, let's go ahead and get started. They say, well, I'm not quite ready and all that kind of stuff. Well, you got to be ready no matter what. And let me give you an example. My father passed away 10 years ago, about 25 years ago. He put he set up five $25 a month accounts for me and my sisters and my brother and all that kind of stuff. And $25 a month. And my mother is 102 years old, and dad passed away 10 years ago. And anyway, these accounts have been coming out. So I've been kind of, managing my mother's accounts, and I kind of forgot about them and stuff like that. And I had started looking, and I had moved some of mine into different funds and so on. But my sisters, they have these three accounts that have been $25 a month. And the crazy part was, if you think back, $25 a month, how much is $25 a month gonna, you think, I mean, I had a car problem. I had to Uber over here. It was probably $15. I mean, $25, who knows? It's nothing. Today, 100 is hardly anything. Well, those $25 investments of about $7,500 have grown to over $30,000. And that's just do nothing, forget about it money. What was the key to that? I just set it up, forgot about it. We forgot about it. Next thing you know, there it is. All right. That's the kind of stuff that goes on when you just get started. So what is the first step that I always tell people? You got to get started. You can't procrastinate. Don't let another week go by. Don't let another year go by. Procrastination costs you money. We start out and we do that. We set a budget up. Let me give you some ideas on budgeting. Simple way of budgeting. And you can go to our website and download the budget forms. And here's what you do. You go through and you put everything down in your budget, and that's your list. All right. And then you take your income and you look and you say, do you have an income gap between your income and your outgo? And inside of that budget forms, there's going to be maintenance supplied. There's going to be money set aside in order to not have a car payment when the car comes up, all those kind of things, future purchases, everything that goes along with it. And then once that happens, you actually know where you're at. And then with that being said, all those weekly miscellaneous expenses that you spend, we need to have it set aside. And so what I tell people is, to begin with, we set up what we call a draft account. If you're married, 100% of your income goes in there. If you're single, 100% of your income goes in there. And then we automate all of the payments. And what are the payments? All the bills that go out, we put them on automation. In addition to that, we pay ourselves first, which is one of the first principles past procrastination, is pay yourself first. And so what we do is we have our drafts coming out, and we have, if it's a 401k, we're getting our matching funds. We have a couple of three investment accounts. One is not really an investment account, but it gets a great return, called an emergency fund. That emergency fund is about 3 months of expenses. It's liquid, and that allows you to reposition some of your other insurances to get rates of return. It keeps you from paying penalties for early withdrawal, all the different things like that. And so what we do is we have that. We have what I call an opportunity fund. An opportunity fund is money we set aside with no real intention, but it's not in a bank. It's out there growing. And then we have our retirement accounts that we put aside money. So now we have an emergency fund. We have that. And then out of that, it's automated. It's always automated. You don't have to do anything. It just automatically happens. It's moved from one place to the next. I remember my first $50 a month fund 40 years ago. And, since then I increased it and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, $50 a month at 10% for 40 years is about $250,000. And that's just money that you'd probably forget about. But if you set it up like Netflix, you never cancel it. If you set your drafts up, you never do that. Today, you can open funds for $50 a month or $250 in growth funds. We actually have that. And one of the things I always told people, and when I was talking to my buddy Dave about it, if you decide you're going to not go out to dinner tonight and you say, hey, I'm going to save it. Well, if you have your system in place, what would happen is you would pull your phone out and you would have your checking account attached to it, which I do. And within about 30 seconds, I would say, hey, I saved $50 tonight. Let's put it in my investment account. And you open up your phone just like you can on Amazon. You can buy anything, anywhere, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, worldwide. You can invest the same way. So tonight, if you decide, hey, I'm not going out, I'm just going to save the money, you have a system in place to pay yourself. So then you pull your phone out and you say, I probably saved $50. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that. That's called my spend it or save it account. And the difference is that money goes into a investment account, and you are on the way to having a different habit. Your budget weekly is the amount of money that you would spend on a weekly basis based on where your money comes in and out that you've already predetermined. And you put that money into either a debit account, separate checking account. And I have people tell me, they say, well, I like to get my points on my American Express. Okay, well, that's fine. Pick out what it is and move whatever money it is. If it's $1,000, $500, whatever your weekly budget is, just stick it on your Amex. They'll take a credit and credit it. And then when you spend it down at the end of the week, you say, hey, I got $40 left this week. I'm done. And I'm going to move my money in for my budget. And then you get your points, or you just use your debit card. But the point being is that you then can look at it. You can log into it and say, hey, I've got, $100 left, or whatever it may be. Now you're within budget. The times that you're under budget that week, you could just move that right into your investment account. So what's happening is we're building disciplines into our life. If you're just tuning in, today is about financial disciplines that will shape and make 2026. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, segment 3 on financial discipline. My name is Roy Matlock Jr., and we are talking money again. And we were talking when we came out of the break about a budget and about saving it rather than spending it and having a place to put it and things like that. And so let me give you an example of, my weird thinking. All right. I've always, I was told you got to be kind of weird to win. All right. If you want to really move forward, you got to be different you can't be like the crowd. You got to go in a different direction. If 1,000 people's going one direction, you may be going the other, and you start in the way you decide if you're just plain dumb going the wrong direction is whether or not you've done any research. And if you find out that the research says, and you've done you may make some mistakes, but I mean, you don't have to always follow the crowd, because the average person, when they retire, has very little money. And if you want to be financially set aside, then, I remember being told that, if you're being called a cheapskate, a skinflint, a lot of these different words to describe a miser kind of deal, you're probably the only one that's got any money in the group. And so let me give you an example of what $1,000 decision means. So let's say right now you got a choice and you say, well, I can spend this 1,000 or I can invest this 1,000. Now, if you think about, and if you have a system in place for your money to go somewhere and get working for you. So for instance, I have one of those little spend it or save it accounts that you can open for $250. And if I were to, want to do it right now, I could put $50 in it, and it's averaged better than 12%, closer to 14% for 50 years. All right. And I'm like, well, that's pretty good rather than me spending it. So the time value of money kicks in. And so $1,000 spent 10 years from now is Zippo. $1,000 invested at 10% is $2,500. $1,000 spent is zero 20 years from now. $1,000 invested at 10% is almost $7,000. 30 years, $1,000 spent today is zero. 30 years is $17,000. In 40 years, $1,000 is $45,000. So now you're looking at this fancy whatever that you really maybe don't need and probably shouldn't spend. And it's $1,000 and you're 25, 30 years old. And you could look at it and say, wow, is this worth $45,000 for this item? And most of the time you're going to say no. So here's your numbers. 2,500 10 years from now is $1,000 today. You can either have 2,500 in 10 years or you can have zero. And 6,700 in 20 years, 17,000 in 30 years, 45,000 in 40 years on the money that you decided to save it rather than spend it. Now, do I think that you should not enjoy life? No, I have every story under the sun of all the great things that I've been able to do, but I've always made it a point to set aside money. All right. And then the way I fixed my fun stuff like traveling and playing golf and doing all the things I do is I work on my income. I always try to grow my income. I remember in the early days before the 2000 crash, I had 18 consecutive years where I had, double-digit income growth. And if you take 18% or 18 years and double-digit growth, and now how did I do that? Well, I got better. I worked hard. I got smarter. I do things like that. So if you're out there right now and you want to fix your life, one of the things that you got to do is become better at what you do, and you can demand more money and get out there and do some side stuff. We are going to be putting out some information. I'm actually going to do a show because if you would like to become a financial advisor, we have a system where we will teach and train you. And if you're the type of person that likes money and you like people, then you should reach out to us. We'll be doing have a lot more detail on it, but you can go to roymatlockjr.com and join the team, and we'll get you some more information out on that. But that's what's going on. So now what happens with your financial discipline is you now decide that the money that money is important and it is the time value of money. Then I do patience. I give time and patience. And then one day what happens is you see your compounding happen. All right. Because when you compound $1, it's only $1. But if you compound $100,000, that compounding period is $100,000. If you have 200,000, your next compounding period is 400,000. So that's the way you start looking at the way you do things. So we start out, we pay ourselves first. We use time and consistency, and we build that consistency by setting up a draft. I have stats that I can give you, but here's the bottom line. I never see people accumulate money that don't automate their money. How about that? I never see long-term savings appear when you do it when you can. I have a lot of people, we do a lot of stuff with real estate agents, and real estate agents self-employed, and they'll get a big check and then they may go for a period of time and then they don't get it. Now I've had them tell me stuff like, yeah, you just don't understand. I don't get paid regular. All right. I'm like, yeah, I get it. And I have other people that are in different businesses. I said, we just don't get paid regular. Like, it's not like we get a weekly paycheck. I said, okay. I said, I can understand that. Have you worked it out with the mortgage company, the electric company, and your health insurance, all the insurance that you're paying for, and everything else that is monthly? And have you worked it out with them and made it to where you just pay when you get paid? Well, yeah, we've worked it out, and here's how it works out. Oh, I didn't pay. Well, you're out. All right. And you didn't pay monthly, you're out. That's the way it works. And so if that is the case, why wouldn't you pay yourself every month? If you pay everybody else, why wouldn't you pay yourself? All right. And I've always said that is a key element, is called pay yourself first, time and consistency. I talked about the emergency fund. We're going to continue going. You have patience. So now what we're going to do is we're going to reframe spending. We're going to look at it and throw a little negativity into it. Yeah, that's going to cost me $7,000. It's only $1,000. Now it's $7,000. All right. And I start looking, it's $2,500 over the next 10 years. That's not $1,000. It's $2,500. That's $45,000. Yeah, that $1,000 that I don't spend, that's $45,000. I think I'll wait. All right. And so what we do is we start working on the habits to get things going. All right. Let me give you some rules that most people never learn. All right. Number one, money without rules creates chaos. All right. You've got to work on your cash flow. That is the most important thing. Your cash flow is the income you earn. What are you doing to work on your cash flow? We always want to work on our cash flow. You know, I wake up every year and I project, I put my goals on paper. I've been doing this a couple weeks ago. I had my reps on on Zoom and I said, hey, I found my 1986 game plan, you know, my business plan, my goals. And I've got the paper, not just pictures. I mean, I had it right there. And all the way back to 1986, that was the first year I started really putting written goals down. And I've been doing that ever since. I read them and because I want to brainwash myself into staying on track. And I want to automatically, unconsciously make good choices. And so systems beat motivation. You want to pay attention to things that really matter, like rate of return and taxation, because taxes are just another bill that you want to cut. And so there's things like that we get into. So when we're building our business and our investments and you incorporated, we want to pay attention. Stick with me. We'll be right back. On that one. All right. And today, first show of the new year 26, and we're talking about financial disciplines and just having the disciplines to, you know, make things happen. And, you know, everything gets back to just simplicity. If you can make it simple, you know, you get up in the morning and, you know, you do your workout. Your workout doesn't have to be a lot. It just needs to be something every day. And if you do the same thing with your money, you automate your financial independence. And so how do you automate your financial independence? Well, the first thing we do is we make sure that we have a solid income. That is not by chance. That is by desiring to have that and by putting the energy into being good at what you do. And then you will earn money. So we want to make sure we have a good income. That's your greatest asset, your ability to earn. You want to protect your income. If you have a family, kids, you need term life insurance. This is part of a defensive positioning. An emergency fund is part of the defense. It keeps you from borrowing money, keeps you from paying penalties. You buy something to protect your income and your assets. These are defense. Term life insurance is an example. The one product that everyone should own is term insurance with living benefits. And the living benefits are now a great option, you know, where you can get, if you have a chronic or critical or terminal illness, you can get that death benefit up front. So it's not only life death insurance, it's actually life insurance. They call it different, but term insurance is death insurance in the event you die, and you're not supposed to when you're young. And so as a result of that, you buy that to protect your income for your family. You also have disability income. We have emergency funds. We have budgets. These are all part of our defense with the idea to create peace of mind. We diversify our income. We have more than one income stream. That's a defensive position. You know, the one thing that I would, you know, I think is worse than dying is to not be able to work and not have income. So we buy disability income. We buy health insurance to protect our savings so we don't go through all of our savings. We buy liability coverage, home, auto, personal liability umbrellas, things like that to protect in the event that we have a fire or a casualty, property type deal. If we get sued, we have liability insurance. And so we do all these kind of things. So the defense is designed around protecting. So what we're going to do is we're going to get solid on our income. We're going to protect all of our weak spots. One of the things that you might want to take as an action item right now is ask yourself this: where are my weak spots? Where's my weak spots? And what am I doing about fixing my weak spots? So I'll give you some examples. I met with a guy that told me, he said, I was with a company and they downsized, and he thinks that AI had a lot to do with it. And so are you up to speed? Are you going to make the AI generation, the new AI? I use it all the time to improve my business and get more done. Are you up to speed? So that might be your weak spot. Maybe you need to get some training, whatever it may be. Maybe you need to diversify your income. So what is your weak spot? I mean, if you were to lose your job now, would you be in trouble? So maybe it's time for an emergency fund. Maybe it's time to downsize. I'll give you one of the first thing I did before I got in the business. I went and bought 2 new cars, got married with about 2 new cars, had car payments. It blows my mind that I had a $600 in car payments back in 1986. All right. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then after I figured it out, I said, okay, what am I doing? I'm financing depreciating assets, which is not a good thing. So you never want to get in what we call bad debt. Bad debt is something tied to something that goes down in value. So therefore the interest rate's high because there's no collateral. If you just think about it, you get a good interest rate if you borrow money on a house. The reason you get a good interest rate on the house is because there's collateral behind it. Now, if you use a credit card and you go out to dinner and you pay for your dinner, there's no collateral behind that debt. It's just your credit. So you have higher interest rates. And so if you're borrowing money on things that depreciate, you're going to pay a higher interest rate. So what's the rule of thumb? Don't finance things that go down in value. Pay cash for them. Simple enough. So we do those kind of things. What is good debt? Good debt is tied to something that you can afford that's appreciating. So what we're doing now is we're creating a system to avoid mistakes. That's what a defense is. We want to avoid mistakes, protect our income, protect our assets. Look at where you're weak at. Do you have things in place? If you need help, we are financial advisors. If you're listening now and you have learned anything, I can assure you there's more to learn, and we have the answers to those kind of things. This is what we do. We then go into the offensive position. So what are some things about offense? All right. Well, once we've got our defense in place, that means we've got our insurances in place. We also have a couple other things like a will and trust. If you have financial power of attorneys, healthcare power of attorneys, all the different things that go along with it. 2 things: if you accumulate money and you have something you'd like to take your life's work and not have a big fight. So that's where we recommend with your kids fighting each other over the money, whatever it may be, or even worse than that, probate court gets it. So we recommend you do some estate planning. But if you're young getting started and you got 2 little kids, it would scare me to death to not have something in place to make sure if something happened to one or both of you, that your kids will be grown and be okay and be taken care of. All right. So they would grow up with money, not being, unable to take care of themselves. And so that's where we go in and we build a defense. We do all that kind of stuff. So we then go on the offense and we learn some things. If you want to play with some numbers, one of the easiest calculators that are out there right now, it's at sec.gov, and you can do calculator. If you just go to Google SEC Gov, G-O-V, calculator, they have compound interest calculators on there. And you can go in and in a matter of a second, you can say, well, what would I, need if I put in $100 a month for 20 years, what would it be worth at 10% or 8% or 12%, whatever. And also you can go in there and it says, hey, I want to have $1 million and I've got 30 years and I need to know at a certain rate of return, what I need to save each month, and it'll tell you that. So it's a pretty cool little deal. And then what we do is we automate things like that. And then the next question is, where do we get the returns? And that's where I learned early on something called professional money management. And what is a professional money manager? Well, one of the fun groups I've been putting people in really since 1991, started in 1934. They've got almost 100 years of track record in their original fund. They've doubled your money every 6 years for almost 100 years. And you say, how do they go about doing that? Well, the way they do that is they have research, and they spend money, big money and time, and go face to face and meet with the companies. And they find the better companies, and they put your money in, and they charge a fee. Typically, if you work with an advisor, you're going to be around 1.25, something like that for advice. And then the underlying funds will charge, half a point, something like that. But when you net it all out, these guys have been able to get you 10 to 12%, double your money in 6 or 7 years. And so what we do say, well, let's go. What does a fund manager do? What is professional money management? Well, the group that I have done a lot of stuff with, and I have access to all of them, they do on-site visits before they invest. They had a pharma rep one time, or pharma analyst, tell him what he did. He said, I go to all the drug companies. I meet with the C-suite. He said, once I meet with the C-suite, I go down and talk to the rank and file employees, and I find out what's on their mind, what they think about management in the company. And I go to research and development, find out what drugs they've got. And then I go to the doctors' conventions and ask the doctors what they're prescribing. And then I go to even talk to patients and see how they're responding. And then we go to DC, and then we rank them A, B, C, D, and E, and we put the money in the ones that we think have the best future. And that's called investing with professional money management. Rather than put your money in the bank, maybe you would be in a fund that owned the bank. And you say, well, why would that matter? Well, I mean, if we take our money to the bank at 2% and they loan it to someone at 21%, I just believe they're making a bigger profit than 2%. That spread of 19 is how they make a profit. And they do that over and over and over and over again. And so I go put my money with professional money managers. These are things that we do. We bypass the middleman being the banks and the insurance companies. We buy the insurance for protection. That's what we do. We go in and we shoot for a plan and we make sure we're protected, because we can't afford to lose a house that burns down, things like that. We can't lose our income. So we do things like that. But the idea is when it comes to investing, we go out and we take advantage of money managers that know how to make money grow. We take advantage of tax deferral. That's why you should always be, putting your money into IRAs and your 401ks and things like that. And so we do that kind of stuff. Another thing that I think is very important is teaching your kids. We've done a lot of family financial workshops. What's a family financial workshop? That's teenagers. We even meet with our clients if they have families and they want their kids to learn what's going on. Wouldn't it be great if when you were 12, 13, 14 years old, that you were able to explain to someone what a mutual fund was, or a managed account? And the reason you're able to do it is because you were able to look at it and see it, because you have a statement and that kind of deal. I remember my kids were little. I took them onto one of the websites and I said, check out all the different funds here and look at what they invest in. All right. And that's the one we're going to put your money into. Which one you want? I remember one of my sons, he's like, GameStop. They got GameStop, and they got Nintendo, and they got all these kind of things. And I said, okay, let's put it in that fund. And that was the way we learned how funds work. And so this is what we do when we create disciplines, automations to get you going. So today, if you're listening in right now, we're a financial advisory firm, a fiduciary. We have been doing this for 41 years. We can help you. When it comes to money, we automate your outcomes for you. So if you would like help, I would encourage you to visit roymatlockjr.com. I would also encourage you to do your research. Check us out. Listen to the podcast. We'll be here every week. Been doing it now for a long, long time. Thanks for listening.